Joining us now is Leela K. Ponappa, former ambassador and deputy national security advisor. Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to cut right to the chase. We're seeing Pakistan's repeated denials, the history of supporting such proxies. But do you believe that these steps that we're taking are sufficient to deter future attacks? Or do you think that India should consider even more decisive actions to hold Pakistan accountable for its ongoing support of terrorism in Kashmir?
I think India's responses need to be in the immediate, the medium term, and the long term. Because we have to recognize that the problem that we face, perhaps not entirely well defined over all these decades, is a systemic problem, namely the nature of the Pakistan state. And repeatedly, government after government, starting from the very first government after independence, has tried to settle things with Pakistan. There's been a yearning for peace, for friendly relations, and so on and so forth. But it hasn't worked. And we have seen the repeated attacks, not just on our military camps, on our civilians, the whole creation of terror ranging from Jammu and Kashmir to Mumbai to South India, and now this horrific and very barbaric act that took place at Pahalgam, where innocent tourists who were coming and in the process were bolstering the economy of Kashmir were gunned down, and that too on communal grounds. So I think there is a huge package of steps that the government has to take. The decision to place the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance was, in fact, its time had come. Because if you read the treaty, and it's a fairly complicated text, uh, it's amazing how much water India surrendered to Pakistan in 1960. And given the positive outlook, I would say, of India trying to make peace with Pakistan, no instance of abeyance of the treaty ever happened until now, because India has now drawn a line. In fact, it's very interesting for your audience to know what the opening, the preamble of the Indus Waters Treaty says. It says that the governments of India and Pakistan, being equally desirous of attaining the most complete and satisfactory utilization of the waters of the Indus system of rivers, recognizing the need to fix and delimiting in a spirit of goodwill and friendship the rights and obligations of each in relation to the other, making provision for the settlement in a cooperative spirit of all such questions, etc., etc. Now, the agreement the treaty was signed in 1960, and we are 65 years down the line, in terms of time. The situation has changed. And I think the kind of terrorism that we have seen from Pakistan in different forms, with different targets, makes it very clear that it cannot be business as usual. I think the world is seeing a questioning of the so-called rules that were set down for nation states by which their behavior with each other was governed. And certainly Pakistan has violated these rules across the board. And therefore, I think this is a first step. I don't think it would be the only step, but I think it sends Pakistan a stern signal that something that was never tampered with from its date of signature in 1960, Pakistan signed a little later after India, that India has placed it in abeyance. It is a very serious and strategic measure.
So Ms. Ponappa, if I were to ask you what other strategic steps, you mentioned that there are other steps that the government actually should be taking. So if I were to ask you, what other strategic steps should India be prioritizing in addressing cross-border terrorism, but also maintaining that diplomatic and regional stability?
Sometimes I think we have to recognize that when steps of the kind that are required are taken, they would be disruptive. And I think we should be prepared for that, just as we should have been prepared for attacks like this. You see, every time that there's been a lull in operations, we get statements that, well, there's been a decrease in militancy, that things are fine, that And it was wonderful that the tourist arrivals in Kashmir were going up and so on. And then there is complacency. And there is this feeling that, well, perhaps things are going to be all right. This is a leopard that will not change its spots. And the hostility to India is built into its DNA. So, regardless of how long the lull is, I think we have to recognize that we can never let our guard down. And it doesn't matter whether it is a dinghy coming into Mumbai harbor, tourists being gunned down after the kind of questioning that so many of them went through. You can never be quite sure what form the barbarity will take. And therefore, our steps will be disruptive, there will be pain, but they'll have to be taken if we are to try to get the Pakistan state to recognize that thus far and no further.
Ms. Ponappa, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your very valuable insights. Your perspective has added great depth to this discussion, and we truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.